Welcome to Pastor Talk. This is Pastor Tim here with Pastor Joe, here with another episode. Thank you for being such a faithful audience and listening to every episode. I know each one of you has, and so we're here today reaching thousands, millions, if you will, who are listening to our voices right now, and we're just thankful for each and every one of you, and we want to talk to you today about food.
So we are talking about hunger and thirsting, and so I thought we'd start off talking about the worst meals that we've ever eaten.
That'll keep me from being hungry today because I'm a little hungry.
So while Tim is thinking about that, I've had food poisoning twice, and one time at Carl's Jr. Not a sponsor, but if Carl's Jr., if you do want to sponsor us, I will gladly accept.
Yes.
I had your jalapeno burger probably about 15 years ago. Got horrible food poisoning, but the burger was delicious. It was fantastic.
They have the superstar, and we know God named every star in the sky. So, I mean, there's a connection between church and Carl's Jr. if we want to go there.
Yeah.
So
hit us up, Carl's Jr. Yeah, we're up. On our social media, and we will accept that. The other time I got food poisoning was from prepackaged sushi. And the disappointing thing about that is, unlike the Carl's Jr. time, it was horrible. It was, one, tasteless, and two, I was throwing up so violently. My face did that thing where you break out in like blood. I don't even know what it's called, but your whole face is in a rash because you had like
bloodworms.
No, bloodworms. No. Okay. So now it's your turn to share a terrible food.
Well, I've not had food poisoning, but I do remember one time. Speaking of sushi, I'm not a big sushi fan, and so I was trying to be bold. My wife and I were in Hawaii for our honeymoon, and so we're like, let's go to a fancy place and just get sushi because it's probably great being in Hawaii. And so I got and this is going from zero to completely raw salmon, and it was just this long strip of salmon by itself, nothing else with it, and I just went down the hatch with it, and I couldn't swallow. And I felt like I was turning green, and Jamie was laughing at me. And
as she should.
I think that was the last time I had sushi. I don't mind those, the sushi rolls that are covered with a bunch of fun stuff. But when it's just raw fish, I have a problem with that. That was also
it's fun. A mental barrier.
Yeah, it was also fun because we got these prawns that same night, and it comes out with, it looks like a full prawn, and it has this eye sticking out, and so I flicked an eyeball at Jamie. It was fun on our honeymoon, so she got a kick out of that.
That kind of stuff doesn't bother me at all. I love sushi. I think the one thing that I could just never eat, no matter how hard I tried, is you ever seen those videos of people eating live octopus?
Oh yeah,
and just
they cut it, and it's still
moving around, and they're literally eating it as it's alive.
Yeah,
I don't understand that. I don't understand. Is the taste? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the reason is behind that. Because I love octopus. I think it's really delicious. And I've had it raw, and I've had it cooked. And I just can't imagine being even able to do that.
I saw a video of someone eating a tarantula, and I think it was moving. A full grown tarantula.
What is that? Why would you eat something that's still alive?
And so
it seems mean.
Yeah.
And two,
right. Yeah. So
okay, well,
you're welcome today if you're fasting and you didn't want to, started getting hunger pains, and now you just have zero hunger after what we talked about today. You're welcome.
Just think about eating raw octopus, and that's it. If you're fasting, that's the only thing you're allowed to eat right now. If somebody offers that to you, and you know what? If you're willing to do that, I guess go for it.
Take a video and send it to us.
Yeah,
love to see it.
Watch the video. But today we're talking about hunger and thirsting for the Lord. And the Bible is just so full of hunger and thirsting. And this is the title of our sermon series. And Tim, you just preached a sermon on hungering for the Lord. And Pastor Blake is preaching a sermon on thirsting for the Lord this week. And so we just wanted to have a conversation about hungering and thirsting for the Lord and what that looks like. You want to start us off, Tim?
Yeah, I think when we talk about fasting, it's interesting. This time of year, there's so many churches that are calling for fastings, 21-day fasts, and We've done it longer than any other church, I think. So, I mean, it's something that we're not just doing to be cool. But now you see online, as a joke, by the way. You're not laughing, Joe. Okay. So we've done this for a while, and so many other churches are doing it as well. And it's like, okay, but really you have to look at the motivation. Why are we doing a 21-day fast? What is the motivation for it? Is it just to do it? We do it every January. It's just what we do. And I think for me, when you think about fasting, and I would love to see numbers on actually how many Christians fast regularly today, because I think it's extremely low. I think when you live in America where there's so many food options and you just think about, hey, I'm saved. Why do I have to fast when there's so many good foods I can eat as much as I want? I think it's really hard to get in that mindset of fasting and why should I fast? And for me, trying to incorporate it as a routine throughout the year has been helpful, not just during a church, led fasting period, but for me personally, why am I fasting and how can I do it as a regular routine and also as needed? I think, if you're facing something that you just want breakthrough on, if you're facing anger or marriage problems or stress at work or a life change, that's a perfect time to fast. And most of the time, I think we just try to figure it out on our own, say a quick 5-minute prayer without actually deeply going into, God, I'm giving you this time. I need you to show up. I need clarity. I need peace. And fasting allows us to do that because you strip away the thing that we need every day, which is food, the thoughts about food. And if you add on consecration with that, if you give God social media or a hobby or something frivolous that we do to just take up time, if you combine those two things together with prayer, it's so powerful. And I think many people don't realize the power of it and how it's laid out for us in the Bible in so many ways that fasting is a part of our spiritual tool belt. I was reading actually today, Daniel 10. And before Daniel got this vision, he said, at that time, this is Daniel 10:2, at that time I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. I ate no choice food, no meat or wine touched my lips, and I used no lotions until the 3 weeks were over. Now, as he's doing this, he gets an amazing vision about the future, but all that was after the fact that he fasted for 3 weeks. Now, this wasn't even a complete food fast. This was specific things that he was giving to God. No choice meats, so who knows if he was still eating some things, and no lotions, which we don't talk about that today, not using lotions, but that might be the next.
I've been fasting for lotions for quite a while.
Yeah, exactly. We didn't even realize we were doing it. So
yeah, I didn't know I was being so spiritual.
Yeah, you were. That was this part of the Daniel fast, I guess. So, but that's important. Daniel was seeking God, and maybe he was concerned about a great war. It said, and they're in the middle of Persia, in captivity, and so Daniel's heart was troubled, and so he took that time to fast. And I think when we think about us, and like I said, going before God for big decisions, like let's spend time, right? And many times we'll get a response that we didn't see coming when our minds are so clogged with other things and our thoughts are so troubled, we can't always hear God clearly.
You've been going to LifePoint longer than I have. How long have you been here?
About 10 years now. 10.
Okay, so I'm coming up on 7. And the reason I didn't laugh when you said that we've been fasting longer than we came up with the 21-day fast, it's because I was literally just trying to think of how long we've been doing it. We've been doing this fasting thing in January, at least the whole time that I've been here.
Yeah.
Have you?
I think it's been, as long as I can remember.
So it's really interesting because this is something that a lot of churches do, and I definitely have seen it pop up more in the last 2 or 3 years, that during this time period, people do 21, 30-day fasts as a church, different things, placing more of a focus on the Lord. And I think it's interesting that just over the 7-ish years that I've been here, to see the growth behind the purpose of fasting. When I was growing up in church, fasting was just not talked about. I grew up in evangelical churches and non-denominational churches, and it's not talked about. And the interesting thing I find is that the more Christians that I know, especially if you've been a Christian in America for a long time, you may have never fasted.
Yeah.
you may have never fasted. And when you look at the Bible, fasting is such a part of it. And Jesus said that we will fast. So like, it's not like something that's done. It's something that that we are supposed to do and that we are supposed to be doing. And the reason behind it that I find as we've done this period of time every year, and we do fast at other times of the year as well, but this is the period of time where we just focus on it as a church, is to just come to a place of prayer and humility before the Lord. I think lots of times we have a certain focus, and in years past, I think when I first started here and we were encouraging people to fast, the difference between consecration and fasting we weren't talking about, and people were, fasting from social media, fasting from these different things, and those aren't really fasts. Fasts is from food. It's from the physiological, biological necessity of food, and consecration is awesome and definitely can and should go along with fasting. But fasting is just coming before the Lord and saying, Lord, I desire you more than I desire food. Lord, I know that you are more valuable and more necessary than food. And there's something that is really, there's something that actually changes when you fast. And every year, and I can 100% guarantee you that Blake is going to talk about Tony Evans and his sermon series on fasting this Sunday. But if you haven't watched that, the whole series, I forget how many episodes there are, like 6, of a series of sermons on fasting and the purpose of fasting and the power behind fasting and the spiritual, what happens in the spiritual realm when you fast. It's really an incredible thing, and it's amazing that, maybe besides once a year when you did like a 24-hour fast with your youth group, that fasting was never talked about in the church as I was growing up. And so we want to change that. And that's why we have that focus at LifePoint Church, is we do want to focus on fasting. We do want to focus on what the Lord has for us.
Yeah. The way I think about it is it clears up the lines of communications with God. Think about like the old school radios when you would dial, and try to find a station. And when you got close to a station, you might hear some static, but maybe a little bit, a faint whisper of the, the tracks that were coming up. And so when you get the exactly tuned in, then you can hear it clearly. And that's how I think about it with God. We all want to hear from God. We all want, we all want peace that passes understanding. We all want these things. But then what does our life show? How are we actually living our life to seek God? First of all, open up the Bible. If you want to hear God speak, open up the Bible. If you want to hear him speak out loud, read the Bible out loud. That's a big, crucial part of our foundation in Christ. But as far as listening in prayer and getting rid of the noise, we have more noise today than any other time in history I can imagine. I was just listening to a podcast, and they were
for sure.
They were saying how
it's not even a competition.
They were saying how kids today are now like looking back fondly at like the 90s and maybe the 80s, 90s, or 90s, 2000s before social media. Before they look back fondly. There's even like that 90s shows back. Like people are looking back at a time when it seemed simpler, and
because it was simpler.
It was simpler. It was.
It's not even arguable that it was a simpler, less mental health issues time.
Yeah.
It 100% was. And we know that you can scroll Facebook for 5 minutes and feel worse. Mm-hmm. You feel worse after just seeing a couple things on there.
There's some good practices with pausing, with practicing scriptural meditation. I'm looking into Lectio Divina. It's a practice of reading a scripture, meditating upon it, praying through it. There's like 5 parts to it, and there's an app that's called like the Lectio 365. And so every day there's like they take you through a verse, pray through a couple things, read the verse again, and it's just a way to like quiet your soul. Whether you do that or whether you do any number of things. Turning off technology, finding time in your day to do that, because for me personally, like if I don't intentionally do this, I will automatically go to things that are just filling time automatically because, well, it's 8:00. The kids are going to bed. Let's just turn on TV. Let's just do something. I have all kinds of books to read that, biblical books, devotional books. I have all kinds of things, or just prayer, like, and being vulnerable. Like, I have my quiet time in the morning where I pray, and many times that's like a checkbox for me. I'm good. I prayed this morning. I'm a, quote, good Christian, good pastor, whatever you say in my head to make myself feel good. But I have time at 9 p.m. Why don't I pray? It's just like, I've been thinking about this because we get into this like formulaic thing with God where we're comfortable, and if anything changes or if I have some kind of crisis, then I'll start praying more. But to hunger for God means that I'm thinking about him throughout the day, means that I'm going to look for every opportunity I can to pray for someone else, to pray for a situation. I mean, as we hear prayer requests all the time that come through, right? And the good Christian thing is to say praying, or I'll keep you in prayer. We say one prayer, but we don't go before God and intercess on that person that is struggling. And this is not just for pastors. This is for all Christians, that we hear these things. We do a little prayer emoji. Yeah, I'm praying for you. But what if you said to somebody, I'm going to spend the next week in prayer and fasting for you, and then you get back with that person, not to brag, but to say, this is what I heard from God for you. I got these verses for you to dive into yourself. How's it going? I know you were struggling with this last week. I've been in prayer and intercession for you. Can I meet with you? Can I have you in my house? Do you need to talk about it? Like, what if we take those steps, right? And that's convicting for me to say that because it requires us to get out of our comfort zone and think about someone else.
Yeah, so going back to fasting and hungering and thirsting, like, fasting is a way for you to recenter yourself on the Lord and to focus solely on him, because as you're hungry throughout the day for however long you're fasting, like, your mind continually goes to that and why you're doing that. And what you should do during fasting is to point your mind towards the Lord, point your mind to the reasons why you're fasting, to seeking him. Jeremiah 29:13 says, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart, right? And that's what fasting and prayer is, that you're seeking the Lord, that you're saying, I want you, right? I desire you. I hunger and thirst for you so much that I am willing to intentionally give up what my body needs to seek you. Psalm 63:1 says, you, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you in a dry and parched land where there is no water. I saw this study about very rich people, very successful people, and I forget who was doing the study, but they were talking to a lot of different people, and they were trying to figure out, what are the commonalities between very successful people, because they're very different, right? Nowadays we think of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and those type of people that are incredibly successful. But if you take successful people as a whole, there's really almost nothing that brings them together. Almost no character trait, almost no strategy, nothing. Do you know what brings them together? They are all centered around their one thing, right? A successful, farmer, land baron, he's not going to be doing this and mining Bitcoin and investing in all these different things. He's going to do the one thing and the one thing that he knows. He's going to, do land, and he's going to farm, and he's going to invest in that, and he's going to keep going because he knows that, and he knows how to be successful in that. And that's the most common thing, is a dedication to one thing. Not this just spread out, jack of all trades, master of none type thing, centered on one thing. And so I find that lots of people, and in this day and age, it's way easier to be spread out in everything, in your interests, in, jumping around to different things. This month you might be really into cooking, You might be watching all these cooking shows and you're buying different things for your kitchen and different ways of cooking. And then next month you might be into, right now we're into airsoft, and that's a really enjoyable activity that we do together. But it's so easy to just jump around to these different hobbies and make those our passions. It's another thing to be sustainably passionate about one thing. And you have to be super, super intentional to do that, because your mind just wants to wander, and you're scrolling Facebook and it has some ad for something. You're like, oh, I never thought about that. I could be into that. And then you just go down this rabbit trail and of your mind of interest in different things. And so how do we become passionate about the Lord and sustainable as that is our focus? And I think really the answer is fasting. Mm-hmm. It's fasting and prayer and making that intentional time. And it's that intentionality that's going to create the regularity and the passion and the hunger and thirst for the Lord.
Yeah. Speaking of one thing, you should create a worship song saying something like "You are my one thing" to God. That would be awesome. I don't think.
I don't think there's a song like that. Never heard one.
Well, that's a great way to end. Thank you for joining us on Pastor Talk. We want to thank our sponsors, Behringer Tools. So with the new Home Depot opening here in Santan Valley, I know Behringer's in some pretty high-level talks to get a display at Home Depot here in Santan Valley. Now, it's not going to be big. Maybe a small display, a couple hammers, a couple screwdrivers, but it's a good starting point. And then our other sponsor, Lady Boss. Joe, tell us about Lady Boss Shoes.
Yeah, Lady Boss Shoes. If you want to feel confident, if you want to feel powerful, if you want to have the confidence to approach anything in your life, to be that CEO Lady Boss, Lady Boss Shoes is the only way to go. Premium Christians footwear for women.
Links to those websites in the show notes. Thank you, everyone. Again, we'll see you next time on Pastor Talk.